Excellent introduction, thank you. I want to especially shout out Orla, the live transcriber. We had a lovely long chat yesterday, and then I learned that I speak very quickly, which is true, and that's particularly inconvenient to people who live transcribe. So let's seriously give Orla a big round of applause. Of all the people to speak twice, this guy. But okay, you could lint more. You can lint more! Woo! Is it gonna work? We were originally gonna call this talk, this is fine, You're Not Linting Enough, because I think that's a cute, catchy title, but I don't want this to be an accusatory talk. I gave a whole spiel yesterday about how nuance is always important in opinion, and it's fine if you do none of the things that I'm gonna tell you about. It's fine. Write your vanilla JavaScript. That's okay. All the things we're talking about have a lot of benefit, but also come with a cost. The cost is time. You gotta learn the things. Your builds take longer. There's overhead. You have more squigglies in your editor. Okay. It's on. I'm pointing at the thing. Okay, this has been me my whole career. Lint rules, yes, I love them. They're great. I get this warm, fuzzy feeling whenever a tool tells me you're wrong, you buffoon, you did something foolish. It's awesome. But I understand not everyone has the same emotions about their linter as me. Many of you have felt this emotion, specifically what we often call FUD. Yay! FUD is annoying. Fear, red editor squigglies. Oh no, something has broken. Uncertainty. Doubt, uncertainty. Oh my gosh. Uncertainty. I don't know why it's angry, and I haven't read the docs to find out. Doubt. I know my code works. Shut up, VS Code. Shut up, Sublime. I'm just going to run with it. We're not going to do that anymore. No, we're not going to FUD it up. Instead, we're going to approach this tooling area, this static analysis stuff, with love and cheer and appreciation. Who's with me? Woo! Yes! Let's dive in. Static analysis. Static analysis. Why so squiggly? What is that? What? Static analysis is tooling that scrutinizes your code, that looks at it and tells you its opinions without running it. It just looks at the code. It doesn't look at built outputs too much, or even, heavens forbid, running the code. Stuff that runs your code is dynamic analysis. Dynamic, it moves, it flows, it goes. Things like unit tests, end-to-end tests, Cypress, Jest, vtest, Playwright, all that. Static analysis typically comes on a spectrum from speed, the really fast, simple ones, to power, the slower, more powerful ones. Speedy stuff tends to be the formatter area. Powerful stuff tends to be type checkers. Love me some TypeScript. And I personally really also enjoy the middle, linters. Linting. What is a linter, though? And I do like playing this game. Have I sworn at this tool before? A linter is a tool that runs a set of checks on your source code, a set of discrete checks. Each check, each thing it looks for is discrete, meaning it doesn't look at the other ones. It's a bunch of different individually configurable and toggleable rules. Each check or rule is a thing that you care about. Each one of those rules may report on code it doesn't like if it detects an issue as you told it to, or as the web platform team configured it to tell you to. And each of those complaints or reports may contain an autofix or a suggestion of how to correct the code. Let's look at this as an example. ESLint comes with a bunch of core rules, the rules that are built in. For example, logical assignment operators. Who here has seen that name before, heard of this? Anyone here interact with PC39 committee? Great, thanks. Logical assignment operators is what we call the concept or the syntax where this old piece of code can actually be rewritten with an or equals. Who here knew about this new little syntax, this or equals thing? Look at that's beautiful. 3 hands. This is what ESLint is for. It'll let you know, oh my gosh, so smart, this new awesome little way of doing things. Fewer characters, easier to read. Love it. Just quick show of hands out of curiosity. Who here uses ESLint? Almost everyone. Who here truly enjoys using ESLint? I was going to say almost no one, but actually quite a few of you. That's great. Thank you. For those of you who haven't done it in a while or ever, you can get started with ESLint in just a few steps. npm install save dev, or whatever package manager you use. It has this nice ESLint/config configurator that'll walk you through setting up a new package. And npx ESLint dot. Now, this is something I only learned recently. When you say dot, that's a path, and it's the path to the current directory. So you're telling ESLint, run on my current directory. Cute. I always thought that was interesting. You can configure ESLint. Everything we're going to see today is very configurable. Developers do not like being told what to do. They need to have control. And ESLint can be configured with a config file that allows you to extend from a preset configuration such as ESLint:recommended. That's the set of rules that ships with ESLint. It's the stuff that ESLint and collaborators and community members and teams have decided over the course of years through much discussion and debate and anger and rage. These are the things that most people probably want to use in most projects, probably most of the time, probably. And because that's a big probably, because every software developer and every software development project is different, you have rules that can be configured. For example, if you really hate what I just showed you and you're like, that syntax is stupid, why would I ever use it? You can turn things to off or warn instead of error. So rules have 3 configuration levels: off, warn, error. Warning is nice because it means ESLint won't fail the build, and it'll show up as a yellow squiggly in your editor. So ESLint will only fail the build if it sees errors, red squigglies, which can be really convenient if you have a new rule you'd like to turn on, if you just learned about it from some very excited guy in a conference, and you have 5 million violations, and it's going to be a while before that pull request gets merged. I also recommend running ESLint with the flag max warnings to say, I'm not going to allow any more than this number of warnings. Ideally 0, because I don't know if you've experienced this. If you have yellow squigglies, things that don't fail the build in your code base, they will pile up over time. People will be trained to ignore them, and they will be worse than meaningless. They will be meaningfully negative because you now have all these yellow squigglies that people have to ignore. It harms code base readability and health. So do that, the thing on the slide. Also, you can disable rules on a per line, per block, per file basis. You can disable rules. You can lint less. That's okay. I see so many people get all hung up about ESLint because they think it's blocking their build, because they can't ship until they fix this esoteric ESLint rule that shouldn't have been enabled in the first place, or maybe it should have but doesn't apply to that specific line of code. Oy, you can disable ESLint. Sometimes there are cases where ESLint is wrong. Perhaps that rule shouldn't be enabled in your project. Perhaps it's just not applicable. Now, those little comment disables, they can pile up over time too, and I don't recommend using them unless you really need them. So there is a nice flag, report unused disable directives, which says, if I have a piece of code that maybe has been refactored or changed to no longer need this comment, give me an error. Tell me, hey, you silly goose, you disabled the built-in no console rule on the next line, which, as you might expect, reports on usage of the console, but you never removed the comment. Get rid of that thing, you silly, silly goose. All right. Now, a couple pro tips before I start getting even more fancy. There's an ESLint extension for basically every editor out there. I use VS Code. You don't have to use VS Code. It's very popular, but it's got good stuff too. Also, in VS Code and others, you oftentimes have the ability to fix all on save. I really like fixing all my ESLint complaints on save. Personally, I use a lot of ESLint rules that enforce sorted imports, sorted object properties, all sorts of wild things that I don't want to have to do manually. So if I just save a file, I'll see all the things fix themselves. It's very satisfying, very emotionally cathartic. Now, speaking of things that bring me a lot of emotions, stop using ESLint for formatting. I'm going to say this again, and you're all going to say it with me. 3, 2, 1. Stop using ESLint for formatting. Oh, thank you. No to this. Let me tell you why this is a whole thing. ESLint, when it came out, predated Prettier and other common today formatters by years and years. In fact, the research papers that helped create Prettier weren't even published. Maybe just 1 or 2 papers, I don't know. Anyway, it came with a bunch of rules like indent and semi and max len that configured how your lines were supposed to look, what indentation style, whether you use semicolons or no semicolons. And at the time, that was great. We didn't have a better tool, but now we have Prettier and dprint and other formatters. Shout out the Biome project. And a formatter is not the same as a linter. A formatter is on the far end of the spectrum for static analysis. It's fast and it's dumb. Dumb in a good way. It does not understand logic. Love dumb. Dumb is great. I want all my tools to be dumb so that they don't get convoluted and confusing the way more complex ESLint configs can be. And from a more technical perspective, because the way a linter such as ESLint is typically designed as a set of discrete rules, each of those rules cannot and should not know about the other ones, which means their autofixes can interfere with each other. It might have to run in multiple passes to get through all the autofixing. By default, ESLint actually only runs 10 passes when you have fixing enabled. So if you have a whole bunch of formatting rules, you might have to keep running ESLint over and over. And that's slow, and that's annoying. And ESLint is not a good formatter in the first place, even if it does work quickly, because each lint rule has to be individually honed for all the little edge cases. In fact, on the TypeScript ESLint team, the tooling to run ESLint on TypeScript code, we've given up. We've just freaking given up on getting formatting rules to work. So please, use a formatter. Something like Prettier, please. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit from something that gives me unhappy emotions to something that gives me a lot of happy emotions. Anyone want to guess what that tool is in static analysis land? I mentioned it. TypeScript! Thank you, Attila. Yes! TypeScript! Bring up the energy level. Why doesn't TechX or whatever shut up about it? TypeScript, I know most of you, but not all of you, raise your hands. So if you haven't seen it before, TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, JavaScript with types. Matt, I hope you're paying attention in the back. JavaScript describes only your code's values. TypeScript, total TypeScript is great, by the way, highly recommend. TypeScript describes your code's intent. TypeScript, I describe it as 4 things, which will be slightly relevant in the future context of this talk. TypeScript gives you the programming language, which is the thing that describes the syntax you're allowed to use, the idea, the vibe. Then it brings a tool written in TypeScript called the type checker that takes in JavaScript and/or TypeScript files and lets you know if you have type errors, mismatches between that intent and your actual values, your runtime. Then there's the compiler, which everyone has different terminology for compiler versus transpiler versus whatever, but I think of it as compiler runs the type checker and the transpiler, so it also turns your TypeScript into JavaScript. And then there's the language service, the thing that runs in your editor. So, TypeScript. I was being serious, by the way. Total TypeScript is great. Yeah. As a quick example, my button, look at this beautiful, I don't want to guess what UI framework this is written in. No one wants to guess, because if you said React, I would have said Solid, and vice versa. Break the internet. We don't know if my button, if onClick is required, is it a function, is it a string, we don't know. But with TypeScript added into the mix, it'll give us a complaint saying, hey, you declared this onClick prop, and you never used it in this, you never provided an argument for it. What are you doing, you silly goose? And then if you enable TypeScript's no implicit any, the compiler option, it'll tell you, hey, you said that there's this prop onClick, but I have no way of knowing what it's supposed to be. I'm not a wizard. And then if you were to provide, let's say, an interface for it, TypeScript would now be able to say, aha, you said this is a function that returns void, but then you gave it a string. I'm pretty sure you're wrong. Haha. Why am I talking about this? This is a talk about linting. You're right. That's not linting. Everything I showed you is out of scope for this talk. I just really like TypeScript. TypeScript is not a linter. I said a linter is not a formatter. A linter is also not a type checker. The two are different. Who here has said the phrase ESLint over the last decade? Please stop using that phrase. It used to be a good one. Now we've deprecated it. ESLint is an old linter that has been replaced with TypeScript ESLint. It's also a confusing term. A linter is a discrete set of rules. Typically, traditionally, they haven't had knowledge of more than just the file they're running on. Whereas a type checker is the full comprehensive everything. It's a bunch of interconnected logic of we see how the types flow through the program. It's beautiful, it's awesome, it's very powerful, and a lot slower than a linter. Not the same thing. But there is some interplay between them. For example, by default, when you install that ESLint extension I told you to, or suggested, red squigglies from TypeScript and red squigglies from ESLint. That is very off-putting. I don't like how both of them give the same squigglies when you have complaints. What I do is I configure, next slide will show you how, ESLint complaints to always show up in yellow and TypeScript complaints to always show up in red. So much better. Now we see there's a lint rule telling us that I have string or string in my union type. I personally have a linter rule that tells me to put object properties in sorted order. Much easier to see that there's really only one actual TypeScript type checking error. And little humble brag here. I added this to VS Code. I'm very proud of this. ESLint.rules.customizations. Yay, open source. You can say any glob of rules, what is their severity? Is it worn, downgrade, upgrade, whatever? Really cool. And also, fun fact, I highly recommend, again, just unrelated, using the version of TypeScript that you installed in your package. There are versions of TypeScript every once in a while that are released. So it's nice to make sure that each package has type complaints from the specific version of TypeScript it has installed, rather than the global one version you have installed with VS Code. Cool. TypeScript, giving Orla's wrists a chance to recharge. TypeScript ESLint. Let's talk about this thing. I'm almost halfway through the talk, and most of the rest of it will be about this. Haha! TypeScript ESLint is two tools, primarily, that one might want to use. TypeScript ESLint/parser tells ESLint how to read TypeScript syntax. I mentioned earlier that TypeScript is a programming language, among 3 other things. It provides generics, type parameters and type arguments. It's all this different new syntax that is not not JavaScript. Maybe yet. There might be a proposal to add some type annotations to JavaScript. But until then, and even if that gets passed, there's still syntax in TypeScript that JavaScript parsers don't understand. So use that thing, and I'll show you how soon, to get ESLint to work at all. But then also we have specific lint rules for TypeScript code. The TypeScript ESLint plugin package provides you a whole bunch of rules, over 100, that either fix core ESLint rules to also work with TypeScript, or provide functionality specific to TypeScript. If you care about using a type versus an interface, we have a lint rule for you. And they provide rules that use TypeScript's fancy APIs. More on that later. So if you want to configure, this is the very, very base starter. We have this all documented on our website. Google us, or search us, as Martin would request I say. We have the parser option, which tells ESLint to use TypeScript ESLint's parser. We have plugins, meaning load in the TypeScript ESLint plugin. Actually, I think this is a typo. I think it's supposed to say TypeScript ESLint/ESLint plugin. I don't remember. Oops. I redid these all last night. It was great. And then extends ESLint recommended, and also plug in TypeScript ESLint's recommended rules. In fact, don't even take a photo of these slides because it's all on the internet. And these are wrong. I also like sorting my everything, so this is in sorted order now. You could also add in a stylistic preset. We recently added this. This is one of the things I worked on for our V6 with our other maintainers. Because fun fact, if you give developers a recommended rule set and you include stylistic recommendations, like whether to use type versus interface, oh my gosh, they will scream at you on the internet. I did not like that. So we split out all the stylistic recommendations, whether to use one way of declaring array types or another, whatever, stylistic. It's great. I personally use it, but I understand if you hate our stylistic recommendations and want to use your own. Let's look at an example of those stylistic shenanigans. Fun fact, in TypeScript, you can as assert. You can say, my name is not just any old string, it's specifically the string Holland, because I was just in Amsterdam and I had a good time. It was a beautiful city, lovely boat tours. You can say, I expected a const instead of a literal type assertion, using the lint rule, and then it'll autofix to just Holland as const. Look at that. Clean, beautiful. But I personally find this kind of boring because I just told you that TypeScript is this beautiful, flowy system, and TypeScript ESLint lets you use TypeScript APIs. And traditional lint rules just look at your syntax. They don't look at your types. The two are different. Syntax is what's in your file, the literal, this is a name, this is an equal sign, yada, yada, yada. Whereas the types are this conceptual beauty of how things are supposed to be. And wouldn't it be nice, wouldn't it be great if we could tap into that power in our lint rules? We can, because using the magic of the thing I'm now selling to you for free, we have type check linting. We can do things like take a look at your code and know that console log returns void, nothing, and give you a lint rule that says, ha, you silly goose, you awaited something that isn't a promise. Technically isn't a thenable, the JavaScript concept of something with a .then, most commonly a promise. And if we were to tell you you have an unnecessary await, we now also have a suggestion that just removes the await. Nice. That is a very contrived example. I'm pretty sure none of you have ever written await console.log. So let's look at a more complex example. This is React, and I'm going to blaze through it because not all of you write React, and one of the benefits of the linter is it can enforce framework-specific best practices even if you have no idea how to write code in that framework. And I'll just show you that, oh yeah, there's another unnecessary await that the await thenable rule would yell at you about, gently yell at you. And interestingly, we don't provide an automatic fix. We have an opt-in suggestion. You have to manually do it. Because in this case, there are two possible ways you might fix this. You might say, oh, okay, well, I see it returns void, so because I awaited it, I'll change it to return promise of void, just in case someone wants to pass in an asynchronous onClick. That's one way of fixing this. Or what if no one ever passes an async onClick? What if the await is unnecessary? Because if the await is unnecessary, then set running true and set running false, we can get rid of them. And if set running true and set running false are unnecessary, we can just remove this onClick and disable altogether. And if that's unnecessary, we can remove the running state altogether. And if that's unnecessary, we can remove the disabled state because the button's always disabled. And honestly, aren't we supposed to be using aria disabled anyway? Isn't disabled like normally not the right accessibility practice? Whatever. And look at this, we just removed a third of our code using linting. Yay, woo! Linting. Yes, vibes. Now, we don't enable that stuff by default because type checking is slow. People don't like slow, people like fast. People also like features, so, trade-offs. Who would have thought? If you want to use these awesome type check rules, you can enable the type-checked versions of our configs, recommended type-checked, stylistic type-checked. In order to do so, you'll have to specify parser options.project to point to the tsconfig file, the TypeScript configuration file, indicating how to generate that type information. It's also your way of telling us, okay, I'm ready for the slow stuff. Give me the type information as you parse my code. Fun fact, that's how it works. When we parse your code, we also generate things that'll lazily create type information for it. It used to be project had to be a string or array of strings, explicitly saying your tsconfig paths and or wildcards for those paths. Now we added this feature project true because it'll just, most of the time you just want a tsconfig, whatever's closest to your files, which is what that does. So that's cool. Now, there are actually a lot more ESLint plugins that I want to show you, and I'm just going to blaze through these. I'm not going to go too deep into all of them because I think these and many others are awesome. There's an ESLint plugin deprecation who uses this. I just saw it get mentioned on Twitter. One hand. Power to you. It says if you're using something that's deprecated, use the don't do that. And by deprecated, I mean in JS doc syntax at deprecated. This is not a JavaScript or TypeScript like specific syntax. It's just a nicely syntax highlighted comment. So that's nice. That's a good lint rule. ESLint plugin, ESLint comments, who uses it? Oh wow, three hands. Well, two hands. One hand and then two halves. Those no console, like the ESLint disable directive comments, you can say disable them for the rest of the file, but then you might want to re-enable it so that this plugin enforces that, okay, a few good practices, if you disable it, you should re-enable it later if it's not a single line disable. Good stuff. I use this. ESLint plugin JS doc, I actually added this rule. This is a useless comment and it's a waste of space. param ID, VID. Who would have thought? I actually have a standalone NPM package, informative docs, that takes in a name, a type, and the comment, and tells you if that comment is a waste of space. So many people, thanks to poorly configured linters from back in the day, feel a need to add these. And this is actually a really interesting example of behavioral training, especially in ecosystems such like .NET and Java that have a lot of enterprise software that used to get a lot of really strict practices around them, which is a whole other conversation you can have with me after. People would aggressively enable lint rules and similar that say everything needs to be commented. Everything needs an explicit getter and setter. So you end up with people writing silly comments like this to satisfy the linter. Don't do that. ESLint plugin Markdown. Anyone use this thing? No one. Nailed it. I wanted to see how long it would take to find an ESLint plugin no one here uses. If you have a Markdown file, this will parse the code blocks out of the Markdown file and run ESLint on the code inside. So nice. So you'll get unused variable checking. That's not provided by the Markdown plugin. That's a rule that exists already that the Markdown plugin can now run on your Markdown files. Awesome. Oh, I duplicated the slide. Yeah. ESLint plugin N, short for node. Anyone use this? In the back. Awesome. It'll lint for good practices around node packages. Let's say that you import something from a dev dependency because, oops, you forgot it's a dev dependency, not a production, or you didn't switch it to a prod. And it'll let you know, hey, this is not published. If someone imports this using your package, this will get run. It's not a test file. Okay. Awesome. You're going to hate this. Anyone use this one? Perfectionist? This is the thing that sorts everything for me. I love it. It brings me so much joy for everything. It allows alphabetical ascending, alphabetical descending. It'll sort properties, members, imports. Oh my gosh, it's so nice. And there is actual reasoning behind my sorting everything. If I have a long list of things and I want to find a specific thing in that list, does anyone know the big O notation in terms of the capital letter N? What it is? What is the big O of searching in an unsorted list? Or array, or whatever you call it? O of N, meaning you, on average, have to look through all the things, or half the things. But if the list is sorted, what is that big O notation? Log N. You should never interview someone asking that question, but it helps me write code, or rather read code. Awesome. ESLint plugin regular expressions, anyone use this? This is probably the most critical of all the plugins I've shown you in this errata section. It'll test your regular expressions. For example, it will detect potential exponential redos, regular expression dedicated denial of service attacks. In this regular expression, it is saying, give me any instances of the letter A, at least one of them, as a group, any number of times, which means you can have A, nothing, or A and then A, or then A and then AA, or you can have A. So this is actually a potential security issue because people could provide a bad input. Nice. That was not planned. People could provide a bad input, just a bunch of the letter A, and then crash whatever application is running with your package that includes this. So first of all, don't run regular expressions on untrusted, unsanitized user input if they're fancy ones, because that's dangerous. But also, think of how many thousands of developer hours would have been saved if people just always ran this plugin, so you wouldn't get those annoying dependabot or sneak or renovate security updates because someone found a vulnerability from a regular expression, and now we're all getting notified about it. Nice. Yeah, I let this slide in. This is how I write slides, by the way. I thought that was cute. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. And some of you may be saying, that's too much, man. Because it is. Ecosystem proliferation, this is the philosophical portion, can be painful. There's a lot of stuff going on. And although we're all cheerful and excited this morning, on the inside, many of us are thinking, I'm dying here. How can I possibly memorize? There's no human being who should be expected to know everything that gets talked about at a conference, right? This is a lot of info. But this is how things progress. We expose there's all this new cool stuff. We iterate on it, we document it so people learn all these things, and then we automate it. Anyone here remember manually authoring Webpack configs? Yeah, we don't do that anymore. Well, why should we? It's done for us better by the frameworks. So I'm trying to automate this. This is, again, shameless self-promotion, sorry. I wrote a package called create TypeScript app because I don't want to have to keep copy and pasting my 200-line ESLint config in all of my packages. And because I have 3 minutes and 4 seconds left, I want to show you what happens if you run this thing, because I think it's really nifty. Happy birthday tomorrow, Adam. Oh, it's not showing up on the screen. Nothing's showing up on the screen. You don't see, can we? There it is. OK, I don't use warp. What a great terminal. OK, so pnpx create TypeScript app. I'm going to run it in offline mode. What should we name it? Like, what's the name of the repository? I can't make it bigger. I'm so sorry. Is this big enough for the back? If not, I'll just, OK. So it's under me. What should we name this thing? Too late. Butts, coconuts. A very lovely package. Yippee. 2 P's. That's how you spell that. Yay. Everything. Installing packages. You've seen something like this in many other framework or ecosystems, most likely if you've tried to make new packages enough times. Create React app, now create Next app, create Astro app, create Remix app, all these things. This installing packages is going to take a little while because I selected the everything preset, and there's a lot in there. Nice. You know, I'm just going to cancel the rest of it because I don't want to keep going. Oh, no, my terminal crashed. Oh, no, it's OK, we're good. All right, code, butts. All right. Awesome. Look at this. Now I can zoom in. Ha-ha. So this created for me an ESLint config with all sorts of, oh yeah, I forgot to mention the vtest plugin, all sorts of things. Look at this. And then, you know what? If we pm I should be up to date. Great, pm lint, it all works. It works for me. And then if I were to say, I don't know, like do like, if, what was it? Like a plus dot test a, then we get the plugin. Awesome. Yay! Oh no, that's an unused. Is it going to complain now? Whatever. Anyway, the point here is that you can use tooling such as create TypeScript app to install all these things for you and get the latest and greatest of like vtest nicely configured with all sorts of things. And then if you use standardized tooling, one of the benefits is you get like really nice development docs built in that'll walk you through all these things. So I highly recommend, instead of manually configuring all your stuff on your own, try using a builder. It's a nice way of living your life. Because this thing will do all sorts of wild and wacky stuff for you. And I don't want to have to set up all these things on my own. So ecosystem proliferation can be good, actually. Who would have thought? Yay. It's a whole new world. I hope you have a good time exploring it. Let's recap. We talked about static analysis. We talked about linting. Stop using ESLint for formatting, please. Thanks. We talked about TypeScript, ESLint, and a few plugins, and create TypeScript app. Sorry that I'm slightly going over, but these are references. Everything's open source and online. I also tweeted. I'll also put on my Blue Sky and Fastodon accounts. It's all Joshua K. Goldberg. TypeScript ESLint is an open source project. Thank you for this shout out. I don't know where the MC is. Oh, there she is. So really appreciate any contributions, time, money, docs reviewing, anything you can give. Same, as I mentioned yesterday, this is what I do. This is actually what I do. I work on TypeScript ESLint and other tools such as create TypeScript app because I want tooling to be better. And I also wrote a book on TypeScript, which I would really appreciate if you got and told me all your complaints about. That would be wonderful. But again, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.